Hello everyone, welcome to History. I'm John Wright, I'm the Divisional Director for Humanities and Social Sciences, and this is Georgia Bullock, who's Head of History. So welcome, and if you've got questions, please type them into the chat.
Good to see you all. There's lots of you in here. So I can see we've got our first question about the 3 history courses. So this is the first thing really to say about history is that we do have 3 different history A-levels. And it means when you come to Esher College, you can choose whichever history A-level you want to do. They are all the same A-level. They're all Edexcel history. They're all the same exam structure, all the same system. And you'll come out with a history A-level at the end. So this is the question we get asked most often. And this slide in the background that hopefully you can all see shows you the structure of the 3 courses. So we divide them roughly by theme. So we've got 2 modern history A-levels and 1 early modern history A-level. And it's up to you to decide which one you want to do. John, do you want to talk about
I teach HDA history, and if you've done Weimar Republic, as probably quite a lot of you have done at GCSE, the Nazis is going to be coursework, but it's going to be different. It won't be on Weimar, it'll be the Nazis 1933 to 39. You'll be studying communist Russia from Lenin all the way through to Gorbachev, who died this year. And you'll also be studying communism under Mao in Mao's China from 1949 to 76. And the paper 3 that you do in the second year will be on the British Empire from 1763 to 1914.
Okay, so our second modern history at A-level is what we call our oppression and equality, A-level our HOA, and in the first year, your long course, you get to do the American Dream. So picking up a little bit on what you've done already for Cold War at GCSE, some of you, but going into more depth about what it was like to live in America, civil rights in America, not only Black civil rights, but Hispanic, Native American, women's rights, as well as the presidents, the boom and the bust, lifestyle, social society, all those sorts of things. Alongside that, you do South Africa, the formation of an apartheid nation and how people fought back against it. And then in the second year, just like John said for HDA, that is coursework on the British Empire, and we can consider what we think of that. And the coursework is on the abolition of the slave trade in the British Empire and who we hold responsible. Our third A-level is our early modern A-level, and we call that Power and Belief. And that is a long study of the Tudors. So those of you who enjoyed Elizabethan England will probably enjoy this one. You get to study Henry VIII and his children in depth, religious change in England, and then alongside that you look at Lutheran Germany and the German Reformation and the change from coursework from the change in Catholicism to Protestantism. And in the second year, you do the witch craze, the persecution of women as perceived witches. And the coursework there is Oliver Cromwell. I'm going to start, John and I will start by addressing some questions. I'm going to take the first one here about the structure of the GCSE and A-level. Completely different. At GCSE, you've got loads of those short questions where you can pick up a few marks by answering quite specific questions, and you have images in the sources. We are only long answers. So each of the papers, it's either 2 long answers or 3 long answers. So we only write essay length responses to either an essay question or a source question. And in the exam, that's 3 different exam papers, which are on the screen right now. John, do you want to talk about the coursework?
Yeah, I will. And just to say, Julia, you asked, would it be like the 16-mark question at GCSE? That's the closest to what an A-level essay is like. Because in the 16-marker, you've actually got to do some analysis. And that is the core component of answering A-level history questions. It's not all I know about. The coursework is a long essay, but it's not just an essay. You've got to do independent research where you choose 3 historical works. This might sound quite scary. 3 historical works written by actual historians, and you've got to be able to evaluate how convincing are their interpretations and then answer the question yourself. But don't worry, we will prepare you for this and sort of help you sort of select the most appropriate works. And that's the same for all of our 3 A-level history courses.
I have a question here about how our class sizes are like. They vary, John, wouldn't you say about 13 to 20?
Yeah, I've got a group of 22 at the moment,
Yeah,
but that's quite unusual.
And that's as big as we ever go. And this leads in with the question about how popular our courses are. So you can see our figures on the screen here now. So we do have 396 students currently, and they aren't spread evenly across the A levels, as you might imagine. It does vary. I would say at the moment the most popular is dictators and imperialists, looking at fascism and communism. Then oppression and equality, looking at social rights and freedoms, and then early modern is the third there. Let's have a look, John. Do you want to go through the minimum grade requirements for
Yes.
GCSE?
So basically, you've got to have if you do history GCSE, you need a 4. You can do history without having done history GCSE, because we know that sometimes your school didn't let you do it. We'd then look at your English grades, and we'd want you to have at least 4s, and preferably better in English language and English literature. I mean, the minimum entry requirement for the college is 5 grades, sort of at grade 4 at GCSE. But really, if you're going to do well in history, I think we'd be sort of expecting you really to have sort of 5s. But we take you with a 4, but aim to do as well as you possibly can.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say that do as well as you possibly can in your GCSEs, and for the length of writing and the analysis fast, it is something to bear in mind, the amount of reading and writing you will be doing. We didn't do trips last year or the year before because of COVID, but we are now looking to restart our trips. So I don't want to put anything in stone yet, but we're certainly looking at Germany for dictators and imperialists. I know Giles is thinking about restarting the Witchcraft trips, and for oppression equality, we have traditionally gone to America for that trip. But we do some smaller scale ones as well, things like Hampton Court that we go to as well. We've got a question here about setting work in the summer before students start to prepare them. Do you want to do that, John?
Well, what you'll have is an initial assignment for the course you want to do. That's when you enroll in the college, you'll find out what that is. And it's basically, if you're going to do the History Dictators course, that'll be finding out, you'll be putting together a timeline of kind of communist Russia and doing some research about it. So I think the most productive thing you can do if you're preparing to do A level is if you're going to do the HOA course, I think you could find out about America in the 20th century, you could find out about South Africa and Nelson Mandela. Anything that you do like that is going to be productive. It's going to be useful for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're well aware that in terms of crossover from GCSE, it's not always going to be there. Hence, John said you don't actually need a GCSE to do history. We know some of you might be forced into choosing between history and geography. And certainly there are some aspects. So there will be a little bit of Cold War in our oppression and equality A level, Elizabethan England in our Power and Belief, and Cold War and Nazis, a little bit of Russia, but Mao's China would be new. So we're well aware that there's loads of new content, and that's where, as John said, a little bit of wider reading, looking at what the topics on will really set you up well.
The exam board is Edexcel or Pearson. That's the same for all 3 A levels. I think I like the question from Nicola, which says, if I love history, what's most compatible with the subject, where there are some similarities? It's going to depend on your interest. History goes quite well with quite a lot of subjects. I mean, if you're really interested in economics, I've got a student at the moment that does history, economics, and maths. That's quite a good combination. If you like languages, history goes well with French, German, or Spanish. History goes obviously really well with English, particularly English lit. It goes well with politics because there's quite a lot in common. History and geography is quite a common combination because they go quite well. We do get students who do maths, chemistry, and history, for example. That's not too unusual. Sociology, that goes well with history. I think you can sort of see it's quite a flexible subject. If you're thinking about doing law at university, history is probably the #1 subject to do because you're looking at evidence and you're sort of selecting information. That's what lawyers have to do ultimately.
Absolutely. I would say that in terms of choosing, we give you loads of time to think about which one to choose. We know it's a hard decision. I think if we were struck with this, it'd be quite hard to choose between them. And we sometimes battle it out between us about who's going to choose what to teach. Spend some time doing that little bit of reading and thinking. Look at our stuff that's on the website, our information sheets. To help you when you come into college. You'll get, before you start, you'll get to come in on an introduction day in the summer, June, and then you'll be able to try out either one of the histories Or if you're really not sure, we'll do one general session, but try out one. You'll get to either try out dictators and imperialists or oppression, equality and power of belief. And that will help you decide. And at the end of the session, we'll talk through the other types of history. Let's have a look.
So Callie says, how much of the coursework is memory based? None. It's not a test. What you'll be given is time in class to sort of research and write it. So it's much more about your interpretation skills and how well you research it and how you reflect on that research that you've done.
Yeah, absolutely. And we spend quite a bit of time on it. It's about a term that we spend 2 lessons a week on the coursework.
That's right. It's worth 20% of the total assessment. So that means 80% is on the 3 exam papers, and that's where you're just going to have to learn the stuff. I think what makes history difficult isn't that, what we teach you isn't, what we do with you in term 1 isn't really going to be that much more difficult than what we do with you in the second year. It's just as the information piles up, you've got to stay on top of it. So we'll help you with that. We'll set you regular tests on work that you've done weeks or even months ago, so you're continually revisiting it and sort of trying to remember it. And George is pioneering a sort of a technique where we remind you in our lessons think links, where you have to try and think about how things that we're talking about connect with what you already know.
And that fits really nice into Gabriella's question about structure of the lessons. So similar to GCSE, we would start with a starter to kind of bring you into the lesson, aware that you might have come from a different lesson, or sometimes our lessons will be 2 or 3 days apart, dependent on your timetable. Then we'll get into the nitty-gritty of whatever that subject is about that day. We'll do a bit of discussion. We spend a lot of time talking to you. We don't believe that we should be hiding, that it's down to the textbook to teach you. We are the experts, and we will bring you into the story, the narrative. Then there'll be a time for some written work, but it's very discussion based.
Yes, very much so. Your opinions really matter. We want you to reflect about what you're learning about and tell us what you think, because a lot of the questions that we give you are debate focused, and we really want you to sort of get into this and sort of develop your own ideas.
Absolutely. And we've got loads of opportunity for extra reading. So each lesson you've got set homework, which is 2 hours per. So it's 4 lessons a week, and we expect you to do 4 to 5 hours homework on top of that. And there's lots of opportunity to take your reading further and then bring that into lessons. I think the worst thing for us is to have a quiet class.
Oh, yes.
We want you talking and contributing to the lessons. Here's a good question about the topics. So this is John and I. You can see us on our screen there, but there are 7 members of staff here. And we teach across different courses, but in terms of you as a student, you will have 2 teachers. One teacher would teach, say, Russia, which would be John, and then I would teach Mao's China, say. Or we would have Helen, who would teach South Africa, and then Jackie, who would teach America, for instance. So each course is divided into 2 teachers, and that runs through the whole year, and they will teach you the 2 strands of the subject.
So Adam asked, do we focus on wars and dictators and imperialists? Well, no, not exclusively. It's on the dictators and the imperialists. So we're looking at, how different Russian rulers, from Lenin through Stalin, through Khrushchev to Brezhnev and then Gorbachev, how they tried to rule the Soviet Union, what tactics they used, did they use terror, did they try to make themselves popular? And these sort of same themes keep popping up when we look at Mao. It's the same sort of issues, really. And then you're thinking with Hitler, the coursework question is, did Nazi dominance rely on Nazi popularity? And that implies if it didn't, then did it rely on terror? And you will read different historians' views because they don't agree. There's no consensus about this. And the same with the British Empire. You sort of think, how did the British rule their empire? Was it through terror? Was it through making themselves popular? And it's very sort of debate focused.
I would say actually we do quite a bit on the proxy wars in oppression and equality, because we look at Vietnam and Korea, where you might expect it to be in dictators, and Cold War, if you enjoyed that's oppression and equality. Caroline's just asked about classics. Yes. History and classics are a classic combination, and we'd love you to do that as a combination.
Yes.
And just a big shout out for classics while we're here. Do go and have a listen in on theirs. It goes really nicely.
Yeah, because we don't do ancient history, but classics lets you get into that along with the literature of ancient Rome and so on. So you definitely do that.
So we've got a couple of questions about changing course. Well, 3 questions about that. So no, once you're on a course and we're established and doing that course, then you stay on that course. But as I said earlier, we talk with you 3 times before you actually enroll to make sure you get that at the interview, introduction day, and then on enrollment day. So you can change the course, Lola, you've picked now, fine. You can change if you've listened to this and you're not sure about it, change away. What matters is when we're in college in September, and that's where it starts.
Are the pass rates and the grades the same over all 3 strands? Yes, they are.
They're broadly very much the same. It's different numbers of students, so they vary because of different numbers of students. But when we're looking at this is across all. We don't have a subject that doesn't achieve. We don't have a course that doesn't achieve. All courses get these marks. Mark, the reason we split it, the reason I would say to come to Isha to do history at A-level is you get to choose the type of history you want to study. We're very aware that in a smaller sixth form of school that the teachers have to put together a course that has a bit of everything. But the difference is we don't do a communist with Elizabethan with Cold War course. We can create the whole course in a way I think as it should be, all of early modern or all of communist and fascist, or for oppression and equality, looking at rights and social justice. So that's why we do that, to allow students to choose the type of history that they love the most. Okay, let's have a look. So if there are people, I think I'm just double checking the questions, but I'm pretty sure we have done that. So I might talk a little bit about how we teach it. So as John said, he's the divisional director, so he's in charge of humanities, and we're lucky enough to have him in history as well. And then there's me, head of history. So we are teachers of history, though John as well teaches politics.
I do.
Then we've got Ellen, who teaches in English and history. Giles and Ellen are our power and belief teachers currently, though Giles also teaches on empire. Ian teaches mostly in Dictators and Imperialists at the moment, and Helen is split between Oppression and Equality and Dictators and Imperialist. Jackie is on Oppression and Equality, and John, as I've said, is on Dictators.
And Oppression and Equality.
Of course you are, excuse me, and Oppression and Equality. So you will have 4 lessons a week, 2 with one teacher for paper 1 and 2 with the other teacher for paper 2. Each lesson is 1 hour 5, and for those 2 lessons we'd expect 2 to 2.5 hours homework to be set.
Yes, homework is going to take a variety of forms. Sometimes we ask you to do some reading in advance of the lesson, so it's not just us talking at you. And we'll want to see that you've understood it and you've got opinions about what you've been reading about, and that you can apply it to sort of historical questions. We can't get away from the fact there's going to be essays, and we will be getting you to practice writing under time conditions. You'll have 2 years to do it, and you'll get better. You definitely will. So my first years have just been coming to terms with their first timed essay right now. Some of them are very happy, some of them less so, but they will improve. This is what we see every year. So there's a step up from GCSE to A-level, and I think it's worth saying to you that even a grade 9 at GCSE is worth less than an E at A-level. So you're not going to get A's straight away unless you're really, really good. So don't worry, we will help you make that transition. And you've seen what our results look like. Our results are brilliant, though I say it myself. I think they are. And we're so proud of our students with the results they've got.
And we should say, actually, so Helen used to be head of history at a school, and I'm also a GCSE examiner. We have Ian's also a GCSE examiner, so we completely understand the GCSE requirements. And in addition to us, 3 of us are also A-level examiners. So we actually examine on the A-level topics as well. So we are best placed to really support you and help you. And we are aware that is a real step up from GCSE. But like John said, we help you and support you with that. Patrick, you've got to love a bit of Mao. I don't think you're going to, I think you'll struggle because Mao is all year, and Mao is really good. If you enjoy communism, you will enjoy Mao's China. The Nazi aspect is the coursework, so that's the less of the taught bit. So use the taught sections to help you choose what you'd like to do. Mark, in terms of the questions, all the questions in history are worth 20 marks, and you should spend in the exam 45 minutes on a question. So it's probably a good time to go back to the exam. you will have 3 exams. For the first paper, so the ones at the top there, that'll be a 3-question paper, 2 essays, 1 long breadth,
Yes.
1 shorter,
Yes.
and then an
An
interpretation.
interpretation question. So what you're interpreting is, was Gorbachev to blame for the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991? And some historians say yes, he was, and other historians say no, he wasn't. It was Boris Yeltsin, or it was, not Gorbachev's fault. It was the mess that the Russian economy was in by that stage. And you form your own opinion, and you look at what the historians you get presented with in the exam are saying, and you think, well, how convincing are their views? And you don't have to agree with them. This is one of the great things about sort of doing A-level history. It's training you to be a historian who can hold your own, arguing with actual historians.
And that is the same for the America course. The interpretation on that paper is Ronald Reagan, in the 1980s president. The changes he made to the presidency, were they good changes? Did he solve economic problems or not? And then for Tudor England, it's on Elizabethan society, the interpretation question. Then for the second paper on there, it's an essay question, 20 marks, 45 minutes. And then a source question. The sources are longer at A level. You'll have 2 sources, which will be about an A4 page to read and then use together. I'm going to come in on Freya's question here about how the course is divided over the 2 years. That's probably a good point to say that's what you do in the first year. The first topic on there and the second topic on there are what you do in the first year. And in the second year, you do the third topic and the coursework. The third topic for British Empire for HDA and HOA, and then the persecution of women and the witch craze in HPA, Power and Belief. That lasts the whole year, and that's a combination of breadth studies, depth studies, essay questions and sources alongside the coursework. So I think we've kind of gone round everything once. So what I'm going to do now, I think we'll start it again. So now allow some of you, I'm aware we're clashing with some other subjects. So if you do need to go and watch another subject, do. And then for people who've just joined us, we'll start this again.
Yes. So my name's John Wright. I'm the Divisional Director for Humanities and Social Sciences, and this is my colleague Georgia Bullock, who's Head of History.
And it's lovely to see you all. There are loads of you in here right now. So some of you will have seen this, but this is the breakdown of our course. The key thing about coming to Esher College is you get to do the type of history you really want to study. So think about what you enjoyed at GCSE and then choose the A-level to match that. The A-levels are all Edexcel Pearson. They all come out as one history A-level. That's what's at the end, Pearson Edexcel History A-level, but you get to choose which one you like to do. John, do you want to start with Dictators?
Yeah, Dictators is the main course I teach. It's about communism. So you study communism in Russia from the revolution in 1917 through the different leaders, Lenin, Stalin, Khrushchev, Brezhnev, up to Gorbachev and the collapse of the Soviet Union. You then look at communism in Mao's China from 1949 to 76. The coursework is an interpretation-based question about, were the Nazis popular? Is that the source of their kind of strength in the 1930s? And you can disagree with that and say, no, it was terror. And then in the second year, you're looking at the British Empire from 1763 all the way through to 1914.
So that's what I tend to say. If you enjoy communism, fascism, big stories of big personalities ruling, that's the one for you. You look very much at power over the people and how people are controlled. In direct contrast to that, our second modern history A-level is oppression and equality. And this is more about searching for rights and freedoms. So in the first year, you do America from 1917 to 1996, and you look at the presidents and how the presidents ruled. Then we look at civil rights, and civil rights means Black American rights, but also Hispanic rights, Native American rights, and gay rights. We also consider the position of women in America. Then we look at society, leisure, tourism, media, as well as the economy. Then alongside that, it's South Africa, the creation of apartheid nation in South Africa, a white supremacist organization who managed to get into power and ruled South Africa all the way through to 1996. And then the story of how people in South Africa fought back against that. So it's a story of campaigning, injustice, rebellion, revolution, I guess, to an extent. Similarly to what John said, in the second year we do the British Empire. So
And I'll just answer
yeah.
Abby, Sam, and Ava's question. We cover a lot of British colonies. We did depth studies on America, the loss of the American colonies and the American War of Independence. Then we look at British Australia and how it started as a prison colony and developed into something much more. We then look at British Canada. We look at the British in what's called the Nile Valley, so Egypt and Sudan, and then the British in India. So five depth studies. But we're also looking at the British Empire much more generally. And you'll be considering sort of why Britain took places like Hong Kong, Singapore, the Falkland Islands, Aden in the Middle East, and sort of whether this was to do with trade or whether this was to do with defending our sort of interests around the world. And you look at how at one point Britain had the largest empire in the world, and we're focusing much more on how that was built up rather than how it kind of got knocked down. But it's still very interesting. It gives you a real insight into why the world is the way it is today.
We certainly bring our critical eye to it, don't
do.
we? Okay, that's really good, John. Thank you. And then alongside that for HOA, the coursework is on the system of enslavement of Africans, the forced removal of people from the west coast of Africa to the Americas. And we consider why that British system that in theory was making a lot of money was disbanded. Are we talking about white saviours, men in parliament who decided suddenly it was morally right? Or are we talking about previously enslaved people rising up? Or are we talking about an economic change and then suddenly the moral argument follows that? So that's HDA and HOA, that's what we call them, dictators and imperialists, or oppression and equality. The third A level is our early modern A level, and this is for you if you enjoy the Tudors, if you enjoy Elizabethan England, and you've had enough of modern history, no more nuclear war, no more fascists, no more dictators, and it enables you just to hone in on that. So the breadth study there is on Tudor England, Henry VIII and his children. You look at society, you look at a lot of religious change, because of course, religion was the driving force in the country at that time. You look at London within that as well. Then the second course alongside that is the Lutheran Reformation in Germany, that huge move and that threat and that challenge to the Catholic faith and the creation essentially of Protestantism. In the second year, that's the witch craze, the persecution of women. And as part of that, we look at persecution of women in Britain. So considering what reasons women were held aloft as being called witches, not just women, but huge majority women. We look at that moving into Germany and then in America, and we consider sources and tracks that were trying to identify women and then start to consider exactly what was going on. Why were women being persecuted and targeted in this way? The coursework there is the English Civil War. Currently, that might be under some discussion, but currently it's the English Civil War and Oliver Cromwell and to what extent he was a military dictator.
Julia's asked, do we revise the content from year one when we're in year two? Absolutely, yes, we do. And it's very important in history. I said earlier on, what makes history, I think, a challenging subject is not its difficulty so much as the fact there's so much content. And we're constantly trying to find ways to help you remember what you were taught in the first year when you're in the second year.
Yeah. Okay, so another good question here about Mao's China. So it starts when he gains power. We do a lesson on the Chinese Civil War, but that course is called Mao's China because it's all about what happens as soon as he takes power, the massive changes he makes. He's come to rule with the Communist Party over a huge fractured part of the earth, and he brings that together and mounts what is one of the most powerful nations. So we run from the day he takes power all the way up to his death in 1976. If you've just joined us, please do put any questions you have in the chat box. We've got a moment or so to go.
Yes. But please do, if you're doing history GCSE, history A level will not be a shock. Yes, it's moving up a level, but the 16 marker question that you'd be familiar with at GCSEs is probably the closest thing to what the A level questions are like. It's a very essay based course. So if you don't have a problem with reading and writing and you like getting into debates, because that's really what history A level is all about. Historians don't agree, and you'll be looking into the debates they have about what were the Nazis popular, for instance, or why was the apartheid movement in South Africa so successful from 1948 onwards? You'll be looking at those sorts of issues and trying to work out what you think.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you need any help, we're here. We do all sorts of sessions to support you. We have lunchtime sessions. We run all sorts of extra clinics and all sorts of things for you to get involved in as well.
I think we're done.
I think we're done. All right, everyone. Thank you very much. It was lovely to see you, as it were, online, and I hope we've answered your questions. Please do go and look at the portal if there's any, at the website, if there's anything else you want to know about.
And if there's any questions we haven't answered, please send them in, and Jay, who's in charge of our marketing, will forward them on to us. But one of us will meet you for your interview if you've not already had it.
And if not, we'll see you on introduction day. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye.